In 1955, in the city of San Francisco, a boy named Steve Jobs was born. His mother, unable to raise the child, gave him up for adoption. He was only a few days old when he came into the Jobs family: Paul, an auto mechanic, and Clara, an accountant. Thus began the story of the man who would change the world. As a child, Steve was not an obedient boy. Already at the age of 10, he was reading techno manuals and taking apart electronics, and at 13, he was working at HP, just calling the CEO to ask for parts for a school project. At 17, in 1972, he enrolled at Reed College, but after 6 months, he dropped out, deciding he didn't want to spend his foster parents' money. He slept on the floor, turned in bottles for food, but continued to take courses that he thought were beautiful, especially calligraphy. It was this aesthetic that later defined the Mac and Apple. At 19, Steve became interested in Zen Buddhism and traveled to India to find a spiritual teacher. He returned with a shaved head and a new outlook on life. This shaped his taste for simplicity and minimalism. At the age of 21, in 1976, with friend Steve Wozniak, he founded Apple. The first batch of computers were assembled in his parents' garage. A year later, they released the Apple II, one of the first mass-produced PCs in history. Jobs became a millionaire at 23. At 29, in 1984, he introduced the Macintosh. He dreamed of making a computer for everyone, not just engineers. It was the first computer with a graphical interface inspired by LSD and calligraphy. Steve made no secret of the fact that psychedelics had changed his thinking, but at the age of 30, he was kicked out of his own company. He fought with the board of directors, was demanding, even harsh. He was fired. It was a humiliation. He used to say, "I was ruined, but I still loved what I was doing." In exile, he didn't give up. At 31, he started a company called Next, expensive but powerful computers. In 1986, at 31, he bought animation studio Pixar for $5 million. No one believed in 3D cartoons but him. At 40, in 1995, Pixar released Toy Story and Jobs became a billionaire. At 42, in 1997, Apple bought Next. Jobs came home. He shut down dozens of failed products, reduced the company to nothing. 3 years later, he released the iMac, then the iPod, and Apple became an icon again. But at 48, in 2003, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He tried dieting, believed in naturopathy, but the disease returned. Despite this, he continued to work. At 50, in 2005, he gave a famous speech at Stanford: "Stay hungry. Stay reckless." No one knew then that he was already preparing for his final battle. At 52, he introduced the iPhone, the smartphone that changed everything. Phones became computers, cameras became movies, buttons disappeared. And at 55, the iPad. Once again, he was one step ahead of everyone else. On October 5, 2011, at the age of 56, Steve Jobs died. He was gone, but he left us with more than devices. He changed the way we live, communicate, think. He taught the world to appreciate the beauty in technology and to believe in the impossible. Today, in 2025, Steve Jobs is more than a name. He is a symbol of audacity, creativity, and the power of a single idea. He proved, even if you were abandoned at birth, you can change the world. The key is not to be afraid to follow your own path.